can't mention names for my current clients. I've signed NDAs, but I can definitely share some information of two special projects. One in North America, and it is a First Nation project where we're reviving a lost healing tradition of a certain indigenous tribe. And it's going to be 100% First Nation owned and managed, and just changing how we view wellness in the North American market. We have a local board for each of, the community and tribe members. Is it a slower process? Yes, but we're getting consensus. And we're reviving just the old ways of doing business that were probably booed, in the 1990s and 2000s. And now we're like, wow, people were actually quite smart way back then.
Yeah.
Maybe we should go back to, get that wisdom back again.
Hello, and welcome to the Travel Growth Podcast. I'm Tom McLaughlin, founder of North9, and this is where I speak to successful travel business leaders and dig into the successes, challenges, and learnings from their experiences over the years. So you, the listener, can take away actionable advice to improve your own businesses and maybe even lives too. My guest today is Sonal Uberoi. She is a strategist in the wellness industry who bridges the gap between the high-stakes world of finance and the nuanced world of luxury hospitality. A law graduate and former Goldman Sachs analyst, she's the founder of Spa Balance and the author of the definitive book on hospitality ROI, The Wellness Asset. Sonal is a wonderful juxtaposition of numbers and data combined with the softer aspects and skills needed in hospitality. From her global upbringing in Kenya to her work advising some of the world's most iconic hotel groups, she's built a reputation for turning underperforming spaces into high-yield assets. She's the voice for the finance of feelings, helping owners and operators realise that hospitality shouldn't just look good, it should perform brilliantly too. We cover all sorts in this conversation, from the disciplines she brought from the trading floor to the luxury hotel floor, her unique essence framework for business growth, and the marathon of entrepreneurship. So without further ado, please enjoy my conversation with the brilliant Sonal Uberoi. Hello, Sonal. Welcome to the podcast.
Hello, Tom. Thank you so much for having me.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for coming on. I'm very much looking forward to talking to you. Since we were connected and we've talked more, and I've found a little bit more about your journey and what you do. There's a lot of layers to it, and so I'm excited to dive into it and see what we can find. I guess normally I start with kind of the journey to how you got to doing what you're doing now, and I think that in particular is interesting for you with early background and kind of some of the different, you've gone from law, finance, and then wellness, hospitality, and that's quite the jump. So yeah, maybe you could start there and just tell us a little bit more about the early days.
Oh yeah, going back way back. I'm from Kenya, and the typical thing we did was go to the UK to study. So when I was studying, obviously way back then, wellness did not have the social currency it has today. And obviously, as a good Indian family, I would either become a lawyer, engineer, or a banker. And I'm like thinking, well, let me go and try law. So I tried law at university, hated every single living minute of it. Then I thought I'll take a year out because I just couldn't handle it. And my sister got me a job as an assistant accountant. And I was like, oh, Jesus, could this get even worse? So I went into accounting. And all this while, I was working in a health club. They called them a health club way back then in London, because London is so incredibly expensive to get myself by through uni and all. And I worked in a health club and I loved it. And that was my first introduction to the working life in, wellness as we know it today. Way back then, that was not called wellness. And I continued to get, worked there. I loved it. So I started very young there. And then once I had decided law nor accounting were my area of life, I said, okay, what else can I do now? I should do something serious. And I clearly couldn't have a profession in, managing a health club or a spa because that just didn't have the social currency. So I was like, okay, now what do I do with myself? Accounting's out, law's out. And then I thought, okay, I'll apply to all the investment banks. So I applied to, back then, Morgan Stanley, Merrill Lynch, and Goldman Sachs. And I got an all. And the offer I was given an offer by all, and I thought I'll go work with Goldman Sachs. And then I worked there for 4 years, and I'm like, oh, good heavens, could this get even worse? And hands down, it was a very difficult experience. But what I learned there is what has set me up for success today. Now I look, fast forward 2 decades, it's been invaluable, that experience. But I can assure you, those years are very difficult. And then I thought, you know what? I'm not continuing with this either. And I'm going to dedicate 100% to wellness. Can you imagine? Shock, horror. You're leaving Goldman Sachs. Oh my God, she's lost her head and everything like that. I was like, yeah, I probably have. Then I came to Madrid, and I just walked into the Reebok Health Clubs, and I told them, I could help you with your commercial strategy and all. I have wellness experience and Goldman Sachs experience. And they're like, okay. And then rest is history. From there, I got headhunted by Six Senses to be in the Middle East. And then I fell in love with wellness and hospitality. My dad was always in the hospitality industry. So he was a civil and structural engineer for hotels. And I remember the first hotels in Nairobi opening, even in Kenya, and how that completely changed the local community. And I was like, I want to do something in hotels, and I want to do something in wellness. And I'm finally living that. So, then one thing led to another. Then I thought, I want to set up shop on my own because hoteliers don't take wellness too seriously. And that's when I set up my consulting business now 18 years ago.
Wow.
And then in 2021, I published my book, The Wellness Asset. And here I am, 18 years down the line.
Yeah, amazing. It's there's some good big leaps that you've made there along the way. You mentioned there the time at Goldman and hating it, but learning a lot. What were the things that you took from your experience in that sector that have then contributed to now and what once you moved into hospitality?
They take grind and take it to a completely different level. So you develop grit, stoicism, to a completely different level. And also when it comes to making business decisions, now obviously you're just adding zeros to the figures that you play with, maybe many zeros after that. But I learned how people make business decisions, and they're very logical business decisions, many of them speculative, but they were visionary in their way. And then when I went into the wellness world, not so much hospitality, but wellness is more emotional driven. And when in the early 2000s, when I started in wellness, and then spas started getting built in hotels, many of those spas later down the road sat empty. You don't see that happening in Goldman Sachs. Even if it's purely speculative, the amount of due diligence you need to do before you invest, it doesn't matter how many zeros we're talking about at the end of the day, but I learned that sharp level of thinking. Is this going to give you a return on investment or not? And I also learned there, maybe today I've, learned how to articulate it far more smartly, But back then, the value of commercial sustainability. You can have the best idea in the world. You can attract the best people, and your product can be superlative. But if your business is not commercially sustainable, ultimately you will not make the impact you want. And then you have to let people off. Then you have to disappoint your clients. So I learned that important part, which is part of my book and why I call it the wellness asset. Yes, it's purpose-driven business, but it has to be commercially sustainable. I'm not saying hugely profitable, but it has to be sustainable if you want to create a legacy and if you want to steward something that's going to endure for generations. So that's what I learned from Goldman's, where it has to be commercially sustainable. Clearly, they didn't use that terminology back then, but the ability to get the return on your investment, I think that is key. Apart from, just the soft skills of just pure hard work and a different level of performance, which I'm very grateful for. Don't get me wrong. Entrepreneurship is definitely not a path for the faint-hearted in
Yeah,
my
it's good prep.
experience.
Good prep for that. Yeah. Yeah, I think there is definitely a risk when you move into the realm of purpose-driven business and impact and things, that the conversation and the thinking and the discussion can get a bit soft, I think, because people who care about that topic are caring, empathetic people who want to support and help other people. And there's a risk of losing maybe the sort of hard-nosed business aspect that, as you say, is integral to that kind of final output and outcome that you want. I think that's a really good point that is missed in this
And
area.
and just to add on that, I think the problem sometimes with wellness or purpose-driven businesses is that we think that wanting to create a business that generates a lot of revenue, makes a lot of money at the end of the day, is mutually exclusive to doing good in the world. And I think we are so lucky we're doing business in today's world where you can create something that means something, that regenerates, that is for the future, for legacies, for generations to come. And you can also make a lot of money along the way and make many other people rich too along the way.
Yeah.
And I think we need to drop that moral kind of judgment associated probably with the previous generation of entrepreneurs, where we could have misunderstood, I think it's something that's underlying, that making a lot of money comes with people who do bad. But I don't see it that way. I think they're not two mutually exclusive concepts. You can have both.
Yeah. So since it's 5 years since we launched the 100% approach that we have, and I've talked about that since the start, is that to me, the key is that there's this kind of virtuous circle where everyone within the circle is benefiting. And that is, we start with this message around the charitable giving and the people we want to support. And that's super important. And the kind of core lead part of it. But then if what's happened within it is that, we can then attract great people into our team who are bought into that thing, and therefore we get better people who do better work, and then clients get better results because of we've got that better team. And then because we get more clients come on board, then there's more money goes to charity, and then we can talk about that and it markets us. And I think if you take out of those things where anyone's kind of having to be a martyr along the way, like, you lose that sustainability element of it. Sooner or later, someone will tire of it or burn out, or people in the team might want to leave if they're not getting rewarded, or if clients aren't getting good results. Kind of, it doesn't matter how sort of good the impact is of that work. So kind of, I think you're right. There is sort of psychological, ideological aspect to this idea of if you make money, there's something bad about that. I think, there's a leap there to kind of get over that hump to think, no, that's okay. Those two things can happen together.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's important. I think this is where, and we're getting it. Yes, we do get it. We do see it. The many of us entering into purpose-driven, conscious businesses, and we see the value of being business-minded, having that business acumen, and making that impact. So I think going forward, we're going to see a very interesting entrepreneurial landscape, and you will see highly lucrative businesses as well as highly impactful businesses. And there will come a point, and this is not me being a tree hugging hippie, but I do think there will come a point where that's just the way we do business.
Mm.
You have to do good. And yes, of course, you have to make money. Otherwise, you won't be going into business. I think it'll become that norm. I do think we'll get there eventually.
But it becomes I think, and it is becoming a sort of commercial selling point that, the world cares to an increasing degree about those kind of things. And so if you have it embedded in your business model, it's kind of a good business decision. I think that's the thing. That's how I look at it. For us, is like it's a good business decision to do that I think will help us grow in various different ways, whether that's financial, whether that's, as a group and a team and capability wise. But yeah, it's not just coming from the kind of blinkered view of, hey, we'll just give as much away as we can. It's like, oh no, it's a lever for growth. And I think as the world evolves and AI is encroaching, and there's there's an increased awareness of threats to the world and the climate and all these different kind of things, and the businesses that do have some kind of impact built into their model will succeed
I
in
100%
all their other
agree.
ways as well.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
think that's those businesses will be paving the way forward and giving permission to others to do the same too.
yeah.
Yes, I definitely think that era is coming.
This is a nice segue into something I was maybe going to tackle slightly later, but when we're, talking about kind of mission of the business, and, again, when we've talked before, I know you have things that you do around regenerating and benefiting local communities and things like that. Tell me a bit more about that for you. What's the mission, the purpose behind what you do? And, I guess if you have examples like that as how that's there in action, tell us a bit about it.
I'm on a mission to leave the industry better than I found it. And I also want to, just the way traditionally hospitality has been done and the way wellness has been done, we've kind of hid behind the wow factor of, if you go to a beautiful location, all these bling, a beautiful smile, and you forgive many wrong ways of doing things. And in wellness, you have a lovely massage, lovely experience. Then you can also, our clients go happy. So it's kind of let us off the hook in terms of how we do our business. And what I want to create is that Yale equivalent of wellness business coaching. And what does the Yale look like? The Yale looks like this level of mastery of creating those hospitality experiences, creating those wellness experiences, regenerating and reviving traditional healing. You've seen traditional healing, I was going to say modalities, and using wellness as place-based intelligence. So my mission is to just make sure that that intersection between wellness and hospitality, that continues to be very impactful. not only for our clients where we've always, we will take it up a notch always when it comes to our clients, but also genuinely towards our people and our local community, the local culture, and our environment. And I'm going to be writing a book on this, on how our job is really to steward what has been given to us. And not only just owning an asset for the sake of owning it, but stewarding what, we've been given something very powerful. When you are touching people's well-being, be it emotional, mental, psychological, physical, you're stewarding something very, very important. And I think it's drawing awareness to that and changing how we do business and how we interact with the local community, how we revive and regenerate healing traditions without misappropriating them, and how we're giving back to the destination and avoiding cases like Barcelona, Reykjavik, parts of Mallorca. I'm just speaking here in Spain and going where we've just lost this, just all the hotels within that destination have kind of lost that kind of vibe. Sometimes you go into Alicante and you don't feel that you're in Spain. Or you go to Benidorm or certain parts of Barcelona. And I think that is irresponsible tourism.
Yeah.
And with this kind of Yale of wellness business coaching, it's trying to show people that you can't just offer someone a decadent experience and make them feel good in the moment and you think that is wellness or that is hospitality.
Tell me a bit more then because I think this is maybe a good point to define wellness. How do you frame that when you're talking about it?
This is my definition, so I'm not going to say it's the official definition. I think just to give the definition of wellness, I think we also need to bring well-being in the mix. And these words tend to be used interchangeably and synonymously of one another, and they're not. For me, wellness is your individual toolbox. That beautiful glass of wine, a lovely book, your yoga session, a beautiful, well-balanced meal, time with your family in a beautiful location. That is your wellness toolbox. The individual tools, that vehicle. And well-being is the goal, the ultimate destination that this wellness toolbox takes you to. So wellness is all those individual elements. Now we can name them in however way we want to, but those are the individual elements that help us get to our destination, our ultimate goal. And both well-being and wellness, these concepts are highly personal. My toolbox is very different from yours, and my definition of well-being is very different to yours. And it also evolves. Both concepts do. 10 years ago, my wellness toolbox looks very different to my toolbox today, which will be very different to my toolbox in 10 years' time. And so are my well-being goals. So both wellness and well-being are highly personal and they're constantly evolving. And you can't confuse your toolbox, the vehicle with the destination. That's I think when we do that, then we go down paths that are not helpful. We kind of lose our why. Your well-being is why are you doing this? And the wellness is the what you're using and how you're using it to achieve that well-being.
Okay.
In a very Goldman Sachs definition.
Yeah, no, I like it. So sort of connect that then to what you're doing and what you do on a day-to-day basis. Then give us a bit more background on Spa Balance, who you work with, what you're doing, what you're recommending. Kind of build that out for us a little bit more.
It's been quite an interesting journey. So I have evolved a lot in these 18 years, pivoted a lot. And where I am today is working with landowners or owners of boutique properties who probably don't identify themselves as hoteliers per se, but they want to create a very unique hospitality experience with a strong wellness focus. Now, it's not a typical longevity clinic, but they want that strong well-being focus. Where do I come in? I help them identify why they're doing what they're doing, what they want to achieve with it. So, what is the well being goal? What kind of well being problems are they solving for their guests? What does enhancing the well being of the local, just the whole area, community, and your healing traditions, what does that mean? And then from there, designing the right toolbox. So, the wellness facilities that align. Now, some hotels don't need a full-blown spa. Some hotels don't need a full-blown gym. It can even just be interacting with the local community, getting on board your visiting practitioners or the local kind of equivalent of shamans helping. So that is where I come in. I help them create from the blueprint phase that wellness concept that works for them. And I give them the tools to execute on that and to ensure that it endures in time. I also help those wellness leaders who in the traditional hospitality model have reached the crystal ceiling. You know, there is no growth above them. And they've learned so much. They want to make an impact. These are our future entrepreneurs. And I'm equipping them with the right tools so that they can become the consultants. They can help others steward their own wellness assets and create their own wellness assets. So that's how I use the wellness and well-being. And that's how I help very specific groups of people. And each one of them wants to make an impact. They've seen how wellness has been done and hospitality. They don't always resonate with the traditional trend chasing, and they want to do something differently. They have a clear definition for what it means to them and what kind of impact they want. They're not interested in other people's playbooks. They know that innately they're intelligent and can create their own playbook, but they just need that little guidance. And that's where I step in. So this has been my own evolution, my business, seeing, what is my purpose? What kind of legacy do I want to start creating? And that's how I use that wellness and well-being and how I bring it to reality.
Have you got any good examples of people who are doing that well? So whether it's people you've worked with or, or otherwise, properties, hotels, like you said, whatever it might be, that are good examples of how they've integrated and incorporated those principles that you outlined?
I can't mention names for my current clients. I've signed NDAs, but I can definitely share some information of two special projects. One in North America, and it is a First Nation project where we're reviving a lost healing tradition of a certain indigenous tribe. And it's going to be 100% First Nation owned and managed, and just changing how we view wellness in the North American market. And there is another one in West Africa, Ghana. And everyone goes to Africa for a safari or the typical wellness. Africa is far more than that. And what this entrepreneur is doing is creating a wellness resort, but they're using it as this hub for the people of the returning diaspora. We are a very globalized culture, but we also all have a calling to go back to our roots, to discover who we are. And just that niche of people, giving them the opportunity to reconnect with where they come from, reconnect with their healing traditions, many of them completely forgotten. And in both these scenarios, when there is no written doctrines, not like Ayurveda or traditional Chinese medicine where you have so much written information, we're talking about cultures that passed on their wisdom, their healing wisdom from generation to generation to generation. And the challenge there is, how can we revive that? So it's literally groundwork, going in, speaking to the right people, seeking permission, getting their okay for us to steward their wellness traditions, not to go and misappropriate them or create something different. So it's working with the local community and also hiring a team of experts, not only with wellness. We've got regenerative tourism, hospitality. We have a local board for each of, the community and tribe members. Is it a slower process? Yes, but we're getting consensus. And we're reviving just the old ways of doing business that were probably booed, in the 1990s and 2000s. And now we're like, wow, people are actually quite smart way back then.
Yeah.
Maybe we should go back to, get that wisdom back again.
Well, you don't have to go far on Instagram to find, people who are very keen on that kind of wisdom these days. Are these hotels that are being created with wellness at their core? Is that the general
Yes.
principle in terms of what they are? So I guess turning that around, and maybe with your more kind of Goldman Sachs commercial sustainability hat on, if people are listening to this and they're a tour operator or they're a hotel or accommodation of some kind, what would your advice be in terms of how they should talk about wellness, how they should frame wellness when they are either looking for people to work with or things to recommend, or kind of build into packages, or how they're talking to their customers in terms of what they incorporate in how they're selling things?
Thing when you're coming to, that's an excellent question, and I'll try to answer it as intelligently as I can. When you're talking about wellness and the way you should position it and speak to it and sell it, it has to be a core part of the brand essence and the whole brand DNA of what you do, because wellness, it's an asset which has tangible and intangible value. And you can sell them as packages, you can sell them as community engagement, you can sell that as environmental engagement. There's so many ways that you can package wellness depending on what it means to you and for your business. You can go down the route of the traditional packages, but you can also create experiences that people will travel very far for. I remember reading this recent article, I don't know if it is McKinsey. When you start reading where people were actually working for their dinner. So they would go out and fish, they would go out and forage. That was like, and they spent a sweet, pretty dollar on that experience to go find their raw ingredients and get it cooked. So would that be a traditional Michelin star kind of dining experience? The traditional way is what would go down that road. Whereas today, people are looking for very different experiences, and you would pay top dollar for going in to see or, finding your food and then getting it cooked. And not only with yourself, with your loved ones, with your kids, with your family and all. So I think it's what kind of experience do you want to deliver and what do you want to showcase of your destination? And if you do that well, that is wellness in action.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's an interesting example. That's something I've talked about in my kind of predictions for 2026, is this trend of story living rather than storytelling, and kind of framing things in a way that's people being immersed in the entire experience rather than kind of watching someone else do something. And that's a great example of it. Yeah, go and fish for your dinner, and that's kind of part of what you're paying for, rather than just lying on a sunbed by the pool and then someone cooking a Michelin star dinner for you, and kind of consumption that way. So
And also
yeah.
in terms for tour operators, I know this is probably such I can imagine it being a challenging time because now everyone's talking about wellness. Everyone has a wellness package. And if you don't have a wellness package, something's wrong with you. So there is that kind of not scarcity, but that fear like, oh my God, if I'm not, I will be, I'll be missing out or I won't get a market. But I think putting that fear aside and really thinking about today's traveler wants something deep and purposeful. We're not only traveling for a weekend. We are doing, for example, this 1 week retreat where I need to sit and work on my business, love my family, stay where you need to stay, please. But I just need 1 week to work on this. And it's far more common than we think. Or we need to take this family time and reconnect and do things in a different way. That can be 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 months. Or you can say, you know what? My last chapter of life is closed. I'm starting my new one. People are going through seismic shifts in their lives. And I think packaging just the traditional bling packages we see, I think those days are going. Are just going to vanish. Whereas now people are looking for, how is this going to transform me? And if you can nail that messaging, that package, and we're tired of cookie cutting experiences too. We want an experience where we are engaged in that experience instead of someone just writing an itinerary for us. So I think it's finding that balance. And I think just going to just back to the basics. What is it? What do they want? And showcase that.
Yeah.
I was in a recent conference and I'm not on TikTok, but they were talking about the TikTok generation. But the key message there was before we would market our businesses and we would also control how our business was being marketed. We had the right pictures. Everything was, polished and staged. And what TikTok is doing is now it's led by the consumer. They're creating their own story. It's not at all fancy. And they're interpreting that experience. So I think right now we're losing the power of how we project our businesses. And it's going to the consumer. How are they interpreting us? And I think for anyone in this like hospitality and wellness business, and I assume this works for anyone, nowadays consumers are sophisticated. They have a lot of information. They're not forgiving if they receive something sloppy. And they will give their own version of the experience they've had. And people would say, I want that experience that she's had, or he has had, or they have had. And they will follow other people. They won't follow your business and what it's telling you as a hotel or a wellness operation. And I was like, that is quite interesting because I do see it with my clients. They they try to do something the traditional way and it's not giving them the results it used to give them.
Yeah. Which is sort of exciting and powerful thought, and also a completely terrifying one at the same time, isn't it? Depending on what they say.
It's terrifying.
It's interesting. Another thing that I had in those predictions for this year was around this concept of sort of attribute-based selling, which ties into exactly what you're talking about with the toolkit, and kind of like, one person's toolkit is different to the next person's toolkit. And framing your marketing in a way that caters to whatever that person's toolkit or attribute is how you will get in front of them. And it sounds like from the way you've talked about it that it's the creation of the component parts for each individual which will give you the best chance of creating the best experience for them, or being the most attractive option for them, or kind of having something that's satisfactory and works in that way.
And I think it's also this is where, the hero, the heroine's journey now matters more than ever. You can't just sell what you want to sell and create what you want to create. Each one of us wants to go to man transformation. And we want to use our own toolkit. We're also open to try other new toolkits to get where we want to. So I think it's really making our consumers, our guests, the hero of their journeys, and really getting curious about where are they in their lives right now? What are their problems and what are they looking to us for? Because each one has their own kind of prize in their own mind. And I think once we can actually identify what is it that they're looking for, and we actually help them get it instead of making them get it, just giving it to them, but helping them get it, it's far more powerful. It's like give a village, what is it? Give someone a fish or teach them how to fish. I think we're becoming also guides and educators in our own businesses because our consumers want to be more engaged in the process. They want to be co-creators.
Yeah, I love the idea of making know who your audience is, know who the personas are, and then make them the hero of whatever the story is that you're telling. That's a great way to put it. This kind of segues nicely into the marketing side of things, and you've already touched on a little bit some of the great marketing stuff that you've done. You do a lot you're very active on LinkedIn, and you talked about the book. I think you've done some podcast stuff maybe along the way. Tell us about what's worked for you in terms of growing the business, growing your visibility, kind of how you've gone about that.
Oh, that's such a good question. It's been such an interesting journey, I would say. And also times have changed. When I set up my company 18 years ago to where I am today, and even the marketing and sales has changed so much and evolved since then. I have always found writing to be the most powerful way to get a message out. And writing something evergreen, so topics and subjects that will still be relevant. Things can evolve with time. Personas, behaviors, etc., can evolve, but your true values and what you want to say, I think, only gets sharper. So I have found using content intentionally to get across my message, to educate people, has kind of been key in the growth of my thought leadership. And funny enough, while I've been writing all that content, it's also kind of crystallized my thinking, my views, how I engage with my clients. And I've also found how you market and what message you send out, you attract that person. And you have to want that person. I mean, you have to want to work with them. So these years have taught me what message you do, follow the message that works for you, because you're going to have to deliver on the client you have attracted. And my podcast has been something that has been key for me. My book and writing my framework has helped a lot. And when we talk about social media, I think I've always practiced this kind of constraint, this essentialism, be on a platform that works for you. LinkedIn has been my place. I know people love Instagram, people love YouTube, but my core has always been LinkedIn. And then I repurpose content. I'll put that out on Instagram or on YouTube. And then my podcast is what I do think today's world, it's so much easier to have you in your people in your ears. And I consume information like that when I'm going for my long runs and all. Everyone's in my ear, and I'm noticing I'm reading less as a result. So I have learned that you need to have a very varied content ecosystem. You need your audio, you need your video, you need evergreen pieces, you need short snippets to people sometimes read in a short time span. And you don't need to be the most trendy person out there. I have also known I've not been, I don't talk about trends. Doesn't mean that I don't mention them now and then, but I think just being evergreen in certain part of your content and obviously bringing some fresh stuff is what has worked for me. Um, and that has just allowed people to come to me pre-sold. Has it taken a long time? Absolutely. I have definitely chosen the long path to building my business, but I do think it's also, looking backwards now, one of the most solid ways of going forward. I mean, you know how long it takes to create your podcast episodes. You want it with intention, and you also want to be consistent with it. It is time consuming. And
Yeah.
having that quality control is time consuming. Are there faster ways? There definitely are. I see people doing them. Does it work? I'm sure it does for them. But what has worked for me and the way I do my business is that content ecosystem and just educating, people, letting them know what's happening in the industry and how I can help them. And I found that has worked.
Yeah.
And whenever I've tried to follow funneled, top funnel, middle funnel, bottom funnel, any of those kind of marketing strategies, it's not really worked for me. And I can't be on many platforms either. I only have so many hours a day.
Well, I'm going to come on to team and how we've approached that as well, because I think that's a fascinating topic. The like you're saying with the difficulty of how you go about your marketing. If things take longer and are harder, generally, I think if you've done it in the right way, it then becomes more insulated because less people are likely to have done that. So I think, like you say, kind of taking the long view, it might take longer, it might be harder, but you'll kind of reap the rewards further down the line because, people just won't put in the hard work to go and compete with that. So I think that's definitely a sound way of going about things if you've got the longevity. And you talked about grit already. Tell me a bit more about the process for the book. I'm interested in that. Kind of, what was your thinking about bringing that out? Was that purely as a kind of marketing asset to bring? I've seen a lot of people talk about that as a tool. It frames you as an authority on your topic, and rather, or was it a commercial decision to, hey, I want a book to be published? I am interested in the process as well. Like, how did you publish it? Was it with a publisher? Like, how did you go about all of that?
That's an excellent question. The book for me, I've always wanted to write a book. I'm a numbers ninja. So I thought I also want to be a words ninja. And I wrote my first ebook in 2012. I've always loved words. So I've always wanted to publish a book, but it's like, I want to run an ultra marathon, right? One day. So it's kind of that one day thing I'll do when I'm grown up, right? And then you realize you're long grown up. And then I joined a mastermind and they said, people who have influence in the industry do have a book that's published. And it's not, you don't get sales from the book directly. It's just an asset to help explain people how you work. So the book that changes your life is the one you write. And I definitely think that is true. And that process of writing it, I can only say for me, so the intention was, if you want to be an authority, a trusted authority, a credible authority, write the book, because people can go up on stage, people can even do a podcast, people can even be, you know, influencers in their own right in social media, but few can write a book. I'm talking pre-pandemic times, pre-AI times. So it was a different mentality. Now, you know, ChatGPT or any AI can just churn a book out for you in 5 seconds. But it was different back then. And for me, the process of writing my story, writing my why, really was like a soul searching, because sometimes we do business to, you know, because we are driven by it, but we never stop to think. And when you have to write it, it's even more so. And actually putting my methodology on paper in the most simple format, because when someone's reading, they don't have too much time to move around. You know, they want that information so that they can move forward. And I found that to be life-changing experience for me. Very grueling, because I wrote one manuscript, got it professionally edited. And then when I went to the publishers, the big fat cross on it, and I had to write a new manuscript. Can you imagine? And I wanted to go down the self-publishing route, and I used a hybrid publisher for my book. So what does that look like? A book coach. So what is the book coach doing was basically helping me unpack my information and telling me, please don't put the kitchen sink in. No one really cares about that. You know, so it literally was 10% of my knowledge that I wanted to put in there is what we ended up putting, you know, in the book, The Wellness Asset You See. And just that whole process. And then I marketed it heavily on LinkedIn because I genuinely wanted people's advice on my cover and everything. It just became a community kind of work in progress. And then from there, I was invited to speak to places, and it did really change my business. It took it to a completely different level. And I cannot say if it's the book itself. So this is where this kind of caveat is. It's who I became writing it. So I became a different person. I found myself far more clear, far more authentic. If I have to put, you know, for me, putting it on words and publishing it out in the world, that was serious stuff. And I also matured and learned that, okay, I'm also the author of this book, and the book doesn't just sit by itself and sell itself, you know. You'd think it would, but it wouldn't do that. And actively selling it and speaking about my methodology made me even more proficient at it, and it has allowed me to deliver even better results. As you were saying earlier on, the better the results you deliver your clients, the more clients you will sign. And part of over delivering is clarity in your process and ensuring that it's seamless. Every single step, every single touch point needs to be seamless. And there's where I learned I can't personalize, otherwise I won't be able to scale and I'll burn out, which is not very helpful. So using my framework and really like deep diving into where are people dropping, you know, where are, like the Amazon one click purchase, like, you know, going to that level of detail. How can I improve it? And this is where, you know, the lean startup methodology works so well. You're not going to hit it out of the park the first time round. Even my Essence framework is created around that. And we don't enjoy the iterative process. We'd rather go and try something new again. When we go down our river of misery, we prefer to go back up to Mount Stupid, then work through it and transform. And I'm guilty as charged on many occasions. So the book, I think, was life-changing. I'd strongly recommend it to anyone. Of course, you have to have the time and, you know, the mental bandwidth for that. But it changes you. And it completely changes your business, not because you've written the book and the credibility that clearly goes with it, but how you work, how you view your business. I can only say I truly made my business scalable after that. And I had to go through that grueling process to actually write it. And the book coach helped me say, that's not making sense. I went, hang on, what? They're not wellness people, right? They're not business people. They just are words. Not just, they just help you clarify a lot. So I found that to be key. And I'm also writing 4 more books. The next one is starting. I know if my husband kicks me out of the house, then we'll know that that's probably not a good idea. But
why do one when you can do 4?
Absolutely. So, and the reason I'm doing them is to crystallize my own knowledge.
Yeah. I think you're right. Like there's the whole idea of writing is thinking is something I definitely believe in, and it works for me until I can sort of sit with a blank piece of paper and just start typing away, and it does crystallize those thoughts and help you to realize what's good, what's bad, and so on. So whether that's in book form or blog post form or
it's
Apple Notes,
any form of writing that works.
Yeah. I've definitely spent some time on Mount Stupid as well. That's a good metaphor of using that. I'll be stealing that one off you. Let's go back to the idea of scaling then, because you are a one-person operation in terms of I don't believe you've got a kind of team of employees. Tell us about how you've done that, how you operate the business. I think you're talking about having a kind of network of people that you work with. So I don't know, maybe you could just explain a little bit who you do have, what you do, how that's structured, and how you've used it to scale what you can offer.
Yes, I will tell you first. I'll also give a background on how I got here and why. I think it's important to understand why I've got here. When I started off the business, I was so naive, and the typical thing when you want to scale, you want to find more people. And I would delegate a lot of my work as the CEO of a micro company. Examples, get someone, a director of sales, get someone who looks after marketing, get someone who's actually dealing with my clients and delivering, and then dealing with all the stress that's involved with managing people. And it's your money, so as I was earning and pitching in money that I wouldn't take home, I would give all of that to my people, and then I would have to be living off savings for myself. And I came to this point where I thought that, oh my God, I have to go back in time, find some full-time employment in order to keep this business running, because I just couldn't manage it. So I was like, why am I entering into entrepreneurship? If I'm working twice as hard, I have to work another job to pay my team members. Something isn't working here. And that is when I decided, and that I think the whole writing of the book process and who I became in that process was, okay, this business has to work for me and my lifestyle. I do like money. I do want my business to grow, but my mental health, my family life is important. And how can I make this work? And then from there, I learned that only I can sell my business, as well as, it's mine. And I have to develop that skill because I hated selling. And I even hated marketing, though I liked writing. And I was like, no, marketing is actually letting people know where they are and guiding them in a journey to make a decision to work with you. So I built those skills and took on that function. And I also ensured that when it comes to delivery, I have to be the key person of intelligence. So all that IP is mine. I can't delegate that to someone else. So I took over all the sales and marketing and the delivery. When I say the delivery, the intellectual aspects of it. And what I did was, for projects that need specific work, which everyone needs specific expertise, instead of hiring them, I created this network of people where you're a specialist in regenerative tourism. you're a specialist in purpose-driven marketing. You're a specialist in commercialization. I went and handpicked these people for the project, and I stuck to my lane.
Mm-hmm.
And that is what's helped me be this one-person show that generates far more revenue, 4 or 5 times more revenue, and 20 times more profitability, instead of taking people under my arm under my employment, because I clearly don't have the structure for that. I've created that network of professionals where I'm referring. And I've also become a queen at saying no. Because the more you say no, it's very, very painful at first. The more you say no to business for people who are not aligned with the way you work, or if it's not your wheelhouse, it's not your area of specialty, before I jump in it and figure it out, I'm like, not doing that anymore. I have a network of people and say, I'm probably not the right fit, but I do know amazing people who would be a fit for you. And I connect them. And guess what? That has been returned to me too. So it is reciprocal.
Yeah.
And I think that the power in creating, I consider them, my network is my team.
Mm. So, but in the delivery of what you do, that comes back to you. So you've got those people who sounded maybe a bit more like advisors in specific
Yes.
areas, who come in and help guide you in terms of what might be best for specific things. But then you kind of taking that knowledge, and then you're the one who delivers the thing. You're the one who markets it in whatever platform that channel that you might be doing it. Did you have employees previously? It sounded like you did
Yes,
go
I
through
did.
that process, yeah, and then you decided
And
this is
I
not for me.
decided that if I want to live long, it's probably a good idea if I change the way I do business and create a model that's truly scalable and do one thing and do it incredibly well. And I do wellness incredibly well. I create wellness assets incredibly well. And I stick to that. And anything that's outside of that realm, I definitely introduce those people, but don't get involved. And I've strongly, consulting is a done for you model of business. Then you have the typical DIY, go and find content or a book, and then I'll go and implement that. And in between is you have the done with you model. And I've subscribed to that. So even with my clients, you have a team, they're the ones executing. I'm the one guiding you, because you do no one any favors if you do the work for them. It's a bit like with your kids. If you do the homework for them so that you just get them off your shoulders, your back, like, I'll just do your homework for you, finish off and go, you won't be doing them a huge favor in the long run.
No, and they'll be back asking you to do more homework the week after.
Absolutely. And that happens. It happens, you know? And then you end up getting burnt out. You do your work and their work. And it's like, what did I just do here? So that is what's allowed me to scale and get better and better and better at delivering my results, truly, outstanding results, because you tap into their collective intelligence, my clients' teams, and also my network.
I think there's even for people listening who do have teams and have built teams and are working that way, I think there's a lot of there's a lot of good lessons there in terms of how to operate with a team and the importance of those kind of things. Like you say, adding responsibility, accountability to people who are doing those things, whether they're external people or whether they're kind of in your team. I think for that to be, for that to work for everyone. What have been, and that might be one of them, but what have been the biggest challenges? Like you said, you've been getting on for 20 years now as an operator in this sector.
How much time do we have?
Well, where's there been moments you've clearly built something amazing, done lots of amazing things, but we've all had obstacles and stumbling blocks and potholes and things. What have you bumped into along the way, Sonal, and how have you overcome them?
Oh God, I've bumped into so much, but I think what comes to mind now is my first learning. Like, I don't know how it is in other countries, but in Spain, um, the moment you issue an invoice, you have to pay your taxes, your VAT and your company taxes or your income taxes on that if you're a freelancer. And you can't issue credit notes to not pay those taxes if people don't pay you. So I learned very quick that if a client doesn't pay, go on into it very quickly. So I paid the very expensive price of having people owe me money and then not paying it back. And the way I have implemented it is many different models, sometimes charge up front, again, depending on what I can. But as soon as something goes wrong or there is a delay, I do pause work and I don't issue those invoices because I've learned the hard way that your profit and loss can look fine and dandy, but your bank account doesn't look fine and dandy. And I learned the hard way of just dealing with written off debt as any entrepreneur would deal at some point. I mean, the grades and percentages, maybe mine was very high. The other thing I learned is that as an entrepreneur, I was reading this book, Extreme Ownership. Parts of it, the gist of it, take complete ownership. So I tried to delegate work I didn't enjoy. And I thought, if I just get rid of it, my life will be good. And funny enough, if you don't solve the problem, it will never be solved. You can't delegate your problem to someone else to solve. You have to solve it yourself. And you really need to have a grip of your business. You need to know what each person is doing and know their job. I mean, you don't need to be a ninja at it so that you can help to problem solve. And I've also learned that if you want to, we do entrepreneurship to have a better quality of life, to spend with our loved ones, and hopefully our loved ones will have something, get something out of it too. You have to keep lean. Every single collaborator, team member, whatever you do, there has to be a reason they're there. And when alarm bells start ringing, take action. Don't wait until it's too late because it's so uncomfortable to have that confronting conversation with someone and then probably get sued and stuff like that. Just get it. If it's not a right fit, it will never, ever be a right fit. And you know what? The signs are there since the beginning. The thing is, we know it when we're working for someone and managing people under us. But when it's our business, we're like, if I can just give them a chance, or maybe it was me doing it wrong. It's like, don't go down there.
I think there's probably a pretty common aspect of entrepreneurs and people who've started businesses that there's generally an optimist in there. I think you have to be that way out to kind of think, I'm going to make this jump and kind of go for this thing and give up the security of my job and all those things that come with it. And I think that is a sort of downstream thing with when you talk about growing a team, that optimism can be a problem if you don't, you think the best in people when you're in through the hiring process. You're like, that'll probably be okay, or that'll probably be okay, and then as time goes on, things are happening, you sort of think, give it some time and they'll come around and they'll do this thing. But I think you're right, like in 99 out of 100 scenarios where that thing pops into your brain, it's like, ooh, I'm not sure this is right, it will, sooner or later it will end up needing to be resolved.
And that's costly. I mean, it's costly to any business, but when you're small, it's crippling. And I think the last thing I've learned, there's so many things, but to just mention one, constraint. as an entrepreneur, Mount Stupid is the best place on the planet. And I would live off that Mount Stupid all my life. But, a new shiny thing comes and a new idea comes and a new idea comes and a new idea comes. Um, it's just say no, really constrain and go all in on whatever product or offering you need to create. And I've also learned, this is me, another learning, you have to give a reason for people to come back to you. So it's creating that asset ecosystem. So someone's already entered into your world. And small businesses, we are really high touch. Once they're in our world, let's give them a reason to buy from us again and again and again. And I've not yet nailed that, but I am seeing the value in getting that kind of entry offer, getting people to just dip their toes into my world. And if they want more and can handle more, are committed to more, give them something else. And then when they want more, to give it. So it's that kind of asset ecosystem. And I remember in one of my business masterminds, they were mentioning where there's, for example, Porsche or Porsche, whatever you'd call it, or the Aston Martin, that's easy to pronounce, and the beautiful cars. Sure, they make their money from selling, but the most profit is not from selling their cars. It's from servicing their cars. And many times as consultants or small business entrepreneurs, we get so fixated in creating our Aston Martin. And then we find it's a fantastic product, highly costly too. So the profitability we get on that is relatively low. And we look at our sweat effort, our time effort, our stress effort. And then we don't service that Aston Martin we've created. And we need to carve out time when we have that bandwidth to do so, creating that servicing model, because people have bought that Aston Martin. And many times as entrepreneurs, because we're just barely drowning to create an Aston Martin, we forget that the Aston Martin is not the ultimate profitability driver. I'm not talking revenue, but profitability driver. It's the servicing, because people want to be more in our world. And I found that this is kind of my next step to growth and evolution in
And if
my business journey.
and if you're applying that to travel, tourism, and wellness and that side of things, how are you thinking about that? Is that kind of retention, reselling to clients once they join
Subscription-based
you?
models,
Okay.
virtual, where people can, if they've had, for example, a wellness experience, like let's go to they've had a wellness experience in your facility, they've gone to New Zealand, for example. The experience doesn't end after they've left. They're unlikely probably to come back from, let's say, Spain or the UK to go back to New Zealand. Probably highly unlikely. But if you have a subscription-based model that allows them to relive that experience and continue that experience, because clearly they went there for a reason. Something in your culture has drawn them to you. And a subscription-based model will tie them in. Now, you have to put a lot of effort in that. Now, we've seen that famous blockbuster Netflix. Blockbuster physical rentals. They made their money through penalties, really, at the end of the day, for all the late fees they did. That's an old business model. The Netflix comes with a very, minimal, what do you call it, subscription-based model to pay. But I have my own Netflix account. My husband has his own. Everyone else has their own. And we watch what we want when we want. Just imagine if we gave that same equivalent to our consumers. And you know what? They have already been educated elsewhere by other markets, thanks to Netflix, Amazon. We've already, that education has already been done.
Yeah.
And just imagine your subscription-based model can bring in people who probably would never be able to even afford to come to New Zealand, but they would be able to be in your world. And that's a different stream of revenue. That's a different way of engaging and scaling your business. That's that servicing the Aston Martin kind of.
Have you seen that done effectively in travel and hospitality? Because I guess that it is a different, obviously, Netflix is a great example, but it's not the same as, yeah, come to a hotel, go
There is
overseas kind
this,
of.
there is this talking about New Zealand. There's this resort called Aloha, Aloha. It's been a while since I've been on their website. They created that online community to do that. And even if you have farm-based hospitality experiences, people also engage with that. You can do cooking classes and all. And I have seen a few people, I'm not sure how they've based the model, but I know Aloha in terms of wellness, creating those experiences in nature that has been, done in hospitality, in wellness, and how they've evolved, how it's faring, I don't know. But I found that so smart. I'm like, we let our people go. We only give people such a short time to engage with us. And in the hero's journey, they need many other little small tools that they can take with them.
Mm.
And it's getting curious, like, how else can I impact them?
I guess the simpler thing that again we see overlooked a lot is, rather than, it's not necessarily the as far as the subscription model, but it is just taking care of a customer when they first find you and first book with you, and then being very active in trying to make them book again and become a repeat customer in some shape or form. And that, again, it might not be a subscription model in the sense of, hey, you're paying £7 a month to be a part of our community, but it could just be good, consistent engagement from an email point of view, having someone on your newsletter, good segmented communication with the right kind of people, and so that then when they come around to have their trip, holiday, whatever it might be, wellness escape, weekend away, the following year or 6 months later, or at whatever time interval, which you can track that with the data and by CRMs and things, engaging with them and thinking about that. Because again, what we see a lot of is that people, it's kind of a one and done, and people are just sort of hoping they do get repeats, and quite a big proportion of their business is repeats, but they're not actively doing anything to go and make that happen. So I think there's definitely something in there, even if it's not that full extreme version of subscription, which I agree is an excellent model. I guess it's just maybe a kind of harder one in travel versus as a consultant or something like that. But
I
yeah.
agree. And I think it's, if someone manages to nail it, and I probably will try to nail it at one point with a client, but this is me going back to my Goldman Sachs days. The way we measure what gets measured gets managed. Hospitality is a very well-oiled operational machine. And it has been so for 150 years when you're talking about these traditional schools. And we're still using traditional metrics to measure our businesses that have evolved substantially. It's like school education, some old education system, but what we need our kids and our future generations, the tools they need to succeed in tomorrow's world, is not going to happen in the current educational system. The same if we extrapolate that kind of idea. The front end metrics of how we're attracting our clients, or everything is on sales and marketing, the whole entire kind of sales and marketing machine is it's kind of imbalanced. It's all front heavy. When I say front heavy, is that marketing, that's sales. And then we want people to repeat, but we're forgetting that today's world, people want to live multiple experiences. Even with AI, our concentration spans are going down. Even how people are learning, getting people to sit and watch a 90-minute webinar, for instance, is, it's painful. People prefer shorter kind of things, but then you see, we have talked about podcasts that people stay 3 hours, right? So there is that. If you've done well, you can get people really engaged. But I can't help but think we're missing something in this new way of consumers living life and experiences, particularly hospitality experiences. And we can't revert to traditional model of come back and repeat. And I 100% agree. And I do a lot of my work based on that. And it's smart business. But once they leave, we can't just be happy with 30% repeat ratio if we're lucky as a benchmark, again, depending on locations. We have to be able to take these people who we sent to a mini-mad transformation when they came to us. We want to be able to send them to another one. And I think if we just sit down and see how else can we keep this person coming back to us, maybe not physically. And I don't know what subscription-based model would work. I don't know what would work. But I think this old model is going to be archaic at one point, and we're going to have to use other metrics, not sure what they are, going forward, because people want personalized experiences.
Yeah, there's something in there. I'm kind of thinking about this at a high, big level like Airbnb or something like that. I think I can imagine something there where people are paying to be subscribed for some sort of premium aspect of that and getting benefits from being a member rather than just someone who goes to the site whenever they decide they want to go to the site. I think it plays in when you're at that scale. But yeah, definitely I agree. An interesting one to explore as a sector and kind of see how that evolves. Time has flown. So now we're getting. I feel like we could talk forever. But there's, I guess, one thing I'm interested just to hear your take on is kind of what you think we've talked about challenges a little bit. Kind of what personal qualities do you think have allowed you to do what you've done? Like you mentioned grit from the Goldman days. Like, is there anything else that you think has facilitated you being able to do what you've done so far?
Oh, yeah, good old-fashioned grit has been one of the key ones, that perseverance that comes with it. And I think my superpower is being constant. So I'm a marathon runner. I run a marathon a year. I don't do short sprints. I do think for the long haul. So I will mark a pace and I'll run the 42 kilometers, no matter what. And I don't care what happens in the middle, or even if I hit the wall at kilometer 30, I know even if I have to crawl past the finish line, I will do it. In entrepreneurship, not to,
And there it was. What a fabulous person Sonal is, who's doing some really interesting things and clearly has a mountain of experience and a wide breadth of experience to draw on as well. So a massive thanks to Sonal for joining us. If you want to access the resources and other information around that episode, please go to north9.agency. That's north9.agency/podcast. And you'll find that and also all the other episodes that we've recorded over the years. If you're a business in travel or hospitality and you're looking for marketing support, then drop us a line and we'd love to find out more about you and see if we can help. You can also read more about our 100% initiative on the website, where we share the story behind how we give all the profit we make from our work with clients to educational charities and have a positive impact with the work that we do together. More great episodes to come in season 3. Hope you've enjoyed them so far. Take a look back in the archive from some great people who've shared an awful lot of knowledge and experience with us. And until the next time, stay safe, keep exploring, and happy travels.